coming because I learn and because you're there for me. Do you know what the worst human fears are? Well, according to this man, Peter Bender, who wrote a book on presentations, he says the worst human fears are, number 1, public speaking. Number 2, dying. And number 3, speaking and dying in front of the group. That's right, ahead of dying is public speaking. And I guess I could say I was the classic case. I was terrified of getting up in front of people and speaking. And it wasn't until I joined Toastmasters back in 1996 that I learned to overcome my fear of speaking. Now, having grown up in a small outport community on the west coast of Newfoundland, I moved to St. John's at the awkward age of 12. I became very shy. I found it very difficult to speak to people, even one-on-one, but definitely not in groups and definitely not, to speak out in class. In fact, I went through junior high and senior high school not able to share or speak out at all, very shy. And like Barbara said, that was certainly a personal barrier that I had to overcome. And overcome it, I guess I did, because previous to joining Toastmasters, I certainly could not have stood here in front of you as I do tonight. And coming to St. John's, speaking and being shy and afraid to speak wasn't bad enough. People made fun of the way I spoke, the little I did speak. After all, living in St. John's, speaking with that flat Bay accent was just not acceptable by a good number of people. I felt blessed to have gone through undergraduate and graduate degrees here at MUN and almost getting all the way through without having to do many presentations. Almost, not quite. There was this one communication course, and there were presentations to be done. And I remember sitting through this hour-long class having to do my presentation and sat there and waited and waited and waited. And at the time I was pregnant. And I got myself in such a state, I actually thought I went in labor. I had to breathe deeply and slowly, calm myself. The class ended, and I didn't get to present. Now, the only way I survived that was to ensure that I was going to be first up at the next class, which I was. Because first up meant less time to get nervous, of course. I survived it. But I'll never forget that professor. And it wasn't that this person gave me a hard time, but there was this young man in the class, and I would even go as far as saying young boy. Now, this professor came from the United States, and I share that with you, not to be critical of people from the States. We've got Barbara and wonderful people coming from all over our world. But that person was new to Newfoundland, didn't have a good understanding of accents and dialects. So I can picture this young man still, tall, skinny boy, red hair, freckles, and even more importantly, I remember his presentation. Very well written, very well delivered. But this professor lambasted him for things like putting on H's and taking them off. So instead of hat, he would say, my at. Instead of apple, he would say, happle. I find it hard to do. She also criticized him on his lack of subject-verb agreement and different things like that. She even went as far as questioning him and saying, do you think you'll ever get a job speaking like that? And I just felt so horrible for that young man. In fact, sharing that with you now, I get that feeling in the pit of my stomach that I had some 25 years ago. Just felt so terrible for that young man. Certainly, experiences like that didn't help me overcome my fear of public speaking. And I was probably in the workforce close to 10 years before I could speak out or share at meetings. And I remember sitting there at times thinking and wanting to share something and say something so badly. My hands would sweat, my mouth would go dry, my heart would pump, my mind would race, and I'd try to talk myself into it. You can do this. You know what you want to say. And by the time I got my thoughts gathered and said, okay, I'm going to do it, there were 5 or 6 items ahead on the agenda, or the meeting was over. So I never did get to speak. It wasn't until I joined Toastmasters then that I learned to overcome my fear of public speaking. And I guess Toastmasters helped me in many ways. One way was, and I guess the main way, the variety of speaking opportunities, doing the various roles and the speech manuals. So that certainly helped. And the other big thing would be you, the individual members. You were my mentor, you are my mentor, you're professionals, you bring your unique speaking styles to this club, and as they say, or as the African proverb says, it takes a whole village to raise a child. So we learn from each other here. So it certainly gives me great pleasure this evening to accept this award and share it with you, because without your support, your guidance, and your feedback, I wouldn't be here. And as they say, you learn from the best. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you to each and every one of you.